Hare Krishna. So, welcome everyone to the daily reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, we'll continue from next shloka. This is second, 10th canto, 16th chapter. Krishna chastises the serpent Kaliya, and verse number 27. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shriyotapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parchana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Shah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpataruvyascha Kripa Sindhuve Vacha Patitanam Bhavane Vaishnavevyo Namo Namo नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनित्य नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशधारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna. Okay. So 10th canto, 16th chapter, Krishna chastises the serpent Kaliya, 27th verse. Tam nartum udyatam aveksha tadatadiya gandharva siddha muni charana deva vadva pritya mridanga panava naka vadya gita pushpopahat nuti bhi sahasopadesh pashedu. Tam, him, Nartum, in dancing, Udyatam, engaged, Aveksha, taking note of, Tada, then, Tadiya, his servants, Gandharva Siddha, the Gandharvas and Siddhas, Muni Charana, the sages and the Charanas, Devavadva, the wives of the demigods, Pritya, with great pleasure, Mridanga Panava Anaka, of various kinds of drums, Vadya, with musical accompaniment, Gita, song, Pushpa, flowers, Upahara, other presentations, Nutibi, and prayers. Sahasa, immediately, Upasedu, arrived. Translation purported by the humble servants of Srila Prabhupada. Translation Seeing the Lord dancing, his servants in the heavenly planets, the Gandharvas, Siddhas, sages, Charanas, and wives of the demigods, immediately arrived there. With great pleasure, they began accompanying the Lord's dancing by playing drums such as mridangas, panavas, and anakas. They also made offerings of songs and flowers and prayers. Purport. When the demigods and other residents of higher planetary systems became aware that Lord Sri Krishna was personally putting on a wonderful demonstration of the art of dancing, they immediately came to offer their services. Dancing becomes more enjoyable and beautiful to watch when it is accompanied by expert drum playing, singing, and the chanting of prayers. The artistic atmosphere was also enhanced by the showering of a multitude of flowers upon Lord Krishna, Lord Sri Krishna, who was blissfully engaged in dancing upon the hooves of the Kaliya serpent. 28. Yadyakshiro na namate anga shataika shirshnas tattan mamarda kharadanda tharo angri patai shinayuso brahmata ulbanam ashrito shin nasto vanam vaman paramakashmalam apanagha yet that whichever Shira heads na namate would not bow down Anga, my dear King Parikshit, Shata Eka Shirshna, of him who had 101 heads, Tattat those Mamarda trampled down, Khara, on those who are evil, Danda punishment, Dhara, the Lord who exerts Angri Pate with the blows of his feet, Shina Ayusha of Kalia, whose Life was becoming depleted. Brahmata, who was still moving about, Ulbanam, terrible, Asyata, from his mouths, Arka, Ashrak, blood, Nashta, from his nostrils, Vaman, vomiting, Parama, extreme, Kashmalam, trouble, Apa, experienced, Naga, the serpent. Translation: My dear king, Kalia had 101 prominent heads, and when one of them would not bow down, Lord Sri Krishna, who inflicts punishment on cruel wrongdoers, would smash that stubborn head by striking it with his feet. Then, as Kalia entered his throes, he began wheeling his heads around and vomiting ghastly blood from his mouth and nostrils. The serpent thus experienced extreme pain and misery. तस्याक्षिभिः गरलम् उद्वमत शिरःशु यद्यद् समुन्नमति निःश्वसतो रुषोचै नृत्यान् पदानुनमयन् दमयां बभूव पुष्पै पुष्प्रपूजित इवेह पुमान् पुराण. Tasya of him, Akshibi from the eyes, Garalam, poisonous waste, Udva Mata, who was vomiting, Shirashu, among the heads, Yatyat, whichever, Samunmati, would rise up, Nishwasata, who was breathing, Rusha, out of anger, Uchai, heavily, Nityan, while dancing, Pada, with his foot, Anunamayan, making bow down, Damayam Babhuva, he subdued it. Subdued. Pushpai, with flowers, Prapujita, being worshipped, Eva, indeed, Iha, on this occasion, Puman, the personality of Godhead, Purana, original. Translation: exuding poisonous waste from his from his eyes, Kalia would occasionally dare to on raise up one of his heads, which would breathe heavily with anger. Then the Lord would dance on it and subdue it, forcing it to bow down with his foot. The demigods took each of these exhibitions as an opportunity to worship him, the primeval personality of Godhead, with showers of flowers. तच्चित्र तांडव विडुग्न फला सहस्रो रक्तं मुखै उरु वमन नृप भग्न गात्र स्मृत्वा चराचर गुरुं पुरुषं पुराणं नारायणं तम अर्णम मनसा जगाम. That of him Chitra, amazing Tandava, by the powerful dancing, Vidugna, broken, Fana Sahasra, his 1,000 hoods, Raktam, blood, Mukhai, from his mouths, Uru, profusely, Vaman, vomiting, Nirpa, oking Parikshit, Bhagna Gatra, his limbs crushed, Smritva, remembering, Charachara, of all moving and non-moving beings, Guru, the spiritual master, Purusham, the personality of Godhead, Puranam, ancient, Narayanam, Lord Narayana, Tam, to him, Arnam, for shelter, Manasa, within his mind, Jagama, he approached. Translation: My dear King Parikshit, Lord Krishna's wonderful, powerful dancing trampled and broke all of Kalia's 1,000 hoods. Then the serpent, profusely vomiting blood from his mouth, finally recognized Sri Krishna to be the eternal personality of Godhead, the supreme master of all moving and non-moving beings, Sri Narayana. Thus, within his mind, Kalia took shelter of the Lord. Purport: in chapter 16 of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada points out that whereas previously Kala was vomiting poison, now his poison was exhausted and he began to vomit blood. Thus he had been cleansed of the vile contamination within his heart that had manifested as serpent's venom. The word Smritva, remembering, is very significant here. The wives of Kalia were actually serious devotees of Lord Krishna, and according to the Acharyas, they had often tried to convince their husband to surrender to him. Finally, finding himself in unbearable agony, Kalia remembered his wife's advice and took shelter of the Lord. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Kalia's archival mm, had traditionally been Garuda, the carrier of Vishnu, but now Kalia realized that he was fighting an opponent who was thousands of times stronger than Garuda and who therefore could be only the supreme personality of Godhead. Thus Kalia took shelter of Lord Krishna. कृष्णस्य गर्भ जगतोऽतिभरावसनं पार्ष्णिप्रहारपरिरुग्णफनाफनात्तपत्रं दृष्ट्वा हिम् आद्यम् उपसेदुरमुषपत्न्या आर्ता slataद्वशनभूषणकेशबन्धा Krishnasya of Lord Krishna Garbha, in whose abdomen Jagata is found the entire universe, Atibhara by the extreme weight, Avashanam fatigued, Parshni of his heels, Prahara by the striking, Parirugna shattered, Fana his hoods, Atapatram which were like umbrellas, Drishtva seeing Ahim the serpent, Adyam the primeval lord Upasedu approached Amusha of Kalia, Patnya the wife's Artha feeling distressed, Shlatha disarrayed, Vashana their clothing, Bhushana ornaments, Kesha Bandha and the locks of their hair. Translation: when Kalia's wife saw how the serpent had become so fatigued from the excessive weight of Lord Krishna, who carries the entire universe in his abdomen, and how Kalia's umbrella like hoods had been shattered by the striking of Krishna's heels, they felt great distress. With their clothing, ornaments, and hair scattered in disarray, they then approached the eternal personality of Godhead. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Kalia's wives had been disgusted with their husband because of his demonic activities. They had been thinking, if this atheist is killed by the punishment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, let him be killed. We will become widows and engage in the worship of the Supreme Lord. But when the ladies noticed Kalia's facial expression and other bodily features, and they understood that Kalia had indeed taken shelter of the Lord within his mind, seeing that he was manifesting symptoms of humility, remorse, regret, and doubt, they thought, just see how fortunate we are. Our husband has now become a Vaishnava, therefore, we must now endeavor to protect him. They felt affection for their repentant husband and severe distress because of his miserable position, and thus altogether they went into the presence of the Supreme Lord. Next. तास्तं सुविघ्न मनशोऽथ पुरस्कृतार्भा कायं निधाय भुवि भूतपतिं प्रणेमु साध्वः कृताञ्जलिपुताः शमलस्य भर्तुर्मोक्षेप्सवः शरणादं शरणं प्रपन्ना. That they, the wives of Kalya, tam to him, Suvigna, very much agitated, Manasa, their minds, Atha, then, Purakritya, placing in front, Arbha, their children, Kayam, their bodies, Nidhaya, putting Bhuvi upon the ground, Bhutapatim, to the Lord of all creatures, Pranemu, they bowed down, Sadhvya, the saintly ladies Kritanjalipta folding their hands in supplication, Shamalasya, who was sinful, Bhartu of their husband, Moksha, the liberation, Ipshava, desiring, Sharanadam, he who grants shelter, Sharanam, for shelter, Prapanna, they approached. Translation: their minds very much disturbed, those saintly ladies placed their children before them, and then bowed down to the Lord of all creatures, laying their bodies flat upon the ground. They desired the liberation of their sinful husband and the shelter of the Supreme Lord, the giver of ultimate shelter. And thus they folded their hands in supplication and approached him. नागपत्न्य ऊचु न्यायो हि दण्डः कृतकिल्बिषेऽस्मिन् तवावतारखलनिग्रहाय रिपोषुतानाम् अपि तुल्यदृष्टिर्धत्सेदमं फलम् इवानुशंसन्. Nagapatnya Uchu, the wives of the serpent, said, Naya, fair and just, he indeed, danda, punishment, krita vishe, to him who has committed offense. Asmin, this person, Tava, your avatara, descent into this world, Kala of the envious Nigrahaya, for the subjugation, Ripo, to an enemy, Sutanam, to your own sons, Api also Tulya Drishti, having equal vision, that say you give Damam, punishment, Phalam, the ultimate result, Iva, indeed, Anu Samsham, considering translation. Okay. Translation. The wives of the Kaliya serpent said, the punishment this offender has been subjected to is certainly just. After all, you have incarnated within this world to curb down envious and cruel persons. You are so impartial that you look equally upon your enemies and your own sons, for when you impose a punishment on a living being, you know it to be for his ultimate benefit. 34th verse. अनुग्रह्यं भवतः कृतो हि नो दण्डो शतां ते खलु कल्मषापः यद्दण्डशुकत्वम् अमुसदेहिन क्रोधपि ते अनुग्रह इव समता. Anugraha mercy I am this bhavata. By you Krita done. He indeed not towards danda, punishment, asatam of the evil te. By you Khalu indeed kalmasha apaha, the dispelling of the contamination yat because danda shukatvam, the condition of appearing as a serpent, amusha of this kaliya. Dehina, the conditioned soul, krodha, anger. Api, even te, your anugraha as mercy, eva, actually, samata is accepted. Translation. What you have done here is actually mercy for us. Since the punishment you give to the wicked certainly drives away all the contamination, what you have done here is actually mercy for us. Since the punishment you give to the wicked certainly drives away all the contamination. Indeed, because this conditioned soul, our husband, is so sinful that he has assumed the body of a serpent, your anger toward him is obviously to be understood as your mercy. Purport. Srila Madhavacharya points out in this connection that when a pious person suffers in this world, he realizes the punishment the Supreme Lord is meting out of me is actually is caused as mercy. Envious persons, however, even after being punished by the Lord for their purification, continue to envy him and be resentful, and this attitude is a reason for the continued failure in to understand the absolute truth. Okay. तपः सुतप्तं किम् अनेन पूर्वं निरस्तमानेन च मानदेन धर्म अथवा सर्वः जनानुकम्पया यतो भवांस्तुष्य सर्वजीवा. In the last previous verse, an important thing that we should remember as practicing devotees, if anything so-called bad happens to us, we should take it as a mercy of the Lord. Because an envious person will on the other hand think that something bad happens, he will criticize more and be more envious of the Lord. But a devotee sees it as causeless mercy of the Lord. Okay, next verse. Tapa austerity su taptam properly performed kim what anena by this kalya purvam in previous lives nirasta manena being free from falsehood cha and mana dena giving respect to others dharma with compassion, sorry, dharma religious duty, athava or else sarvajana to all persons, anukampaya with compassion, yata by which bhavan your good self tushyati is satisfied, sarva jiva the source of life for all beings. Translation. Did our husband carefully perform austerities in a previous life with his mind free of pride and full of respect for others? Did our husband carefully perform austerities in a previous life, which is mind free of pride and full of respect for others? Is that why you are pleased with him, or did he, in some previous existence, carefully execute religious duties with compassion for all living entities, and that is why you, the life of all living beings, are now satisfied with him? Purport. In this regard, Srila Prabhupada comments in his Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chapter 16. The Nagpatnis confirm that one cannot come in contact with Krishna without having executed pious activities in devotional life in his previous lives. As Lord Chaitanya advised in his Shikshashtaka, one has to execute devotional service by humbly chanting and Hare Krishna, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street and not expecting honor for oneself for himself, but uh, offering all kinds of honor to others. The Nagpatnis were astonished that although Kalia had the body of a serpent as a result of grievous sinful activities, at the same time he was in contact with the Lord to the extent that the Lord's lotus feet were touching his hoods. Certainly, this was not the ordinary result of pious activities. These two contradictory facts astonished them.